So, what is next for the Batman? Unlike other comic book movies, there are no end credit scenes with this film. So instead, like the master detective himself, we must look for the subtle clues within the actual film. And there are plenty. Now, the most obvious clue at the end of the Batman, the real big one, is that Riddler floods the city, which is right out of the comics, although that might remind many fans who haven't picked up a Batman comic book in a while of the 1999 year-long event No Man's Land, where another natural disaster, that in that case an earthquake, left Gotham in ruins and isolated from the rest of the world. Batman's rogues gallery carved up the territory, and it was up to Batman and the Bat family, which expanded during that storyline. That's where Cassandra Cain came on the scene. A lot of good stuff there, to keep the peace, along with the GCPD. And they've done takes on No Man's Land already on the Fox Gotham TV show. Harley Quinn Season 2 alluded to that, and even a bit on Titans Season 3. So that's been done. And I never like it. So I'm a little disappointed that they did that in this movie. But anyway, in No Man's Land, though, Joker did infamously kill Gordon's second wife, Sarah Essen, who Gordon had an affair with in the famous Year One storyline. So that, to me, is that, and I guess Cassandra Cain are two of, I think, the best elements of the No Man's Land story, which they never do when they redo it. But anyway, so sure, there could be elements of No Man's Land as the Batman moves forward. Penguin is going to make a power play, as the movie said itself. And also other Bat characters, good and bad, could emerge, their origins adjusted to fit these new circumstances. But I urge you to think not No Man's Land, but Scott Snyder's run. A clear influence on Matt Reeves' movie, as you're about to see. And that's where the Riddler actually did flood Gotham and set up Zero Year, which was Scott Snyder's take on Batman's beginning, where Riddler and the Red Hood Gang were the main villains. Oh, the Red Hood Gang is important. But first, Riddler, during that storyline, flooded the city. And while the government initially helps Gordon restore order, and again, in No Man's Land, the government abandoned Gotham. And in this movie, they say that the government's already arrived to help Gordon. So again, more Zero Year than No Man's Land. Eventually the government decides to call in an airstrike to destroy Gotham, and Batman has to fight the Riddler in order to stop the airstrike, which of course he does, and Gotham eventually returns to normal. Even Selina's final line in this film, or one of her final lines to Bruce, where she says that he's spoken for by Gotham City, well, that's a line, I believe, spoken by Alfred in the comic, straight from Scott Snyder's Zero Year. So that's the comic to pay attention to. So we've done the big Riddler strokes from that comic. But now let's pay attention to the Joker parts of the story, because of course Barry Keoghan is briefly introduced as that character in the end of the Batman. So it's not an end credit scene, but it kind of acts a little bit like one. They have it folded instead into the movie itself. His face in the Batman, Barry Keoghan's face, we don't get a very good look at it, but we can tell that it's horribly disfigured, almost like the way Harvey Dent is often depicted, having had acid splashed in his face. And it really underscores that, hey, Harvey just got it in the face, whereas Joker fell entirely into a vat of chemicals. So it makes sense, especially because that's the approach that Matt Reeves is taking to the Batman mythos, a more grounded, realistic take. And what would happen to a person's face and body if they went headfirst into a vat of chemicals, instead of the more elegant results that we've seen beforehand, right? I mean, actually, Matt Reeves' interpretation makes a lot more sense. So in Scott Snyder's Zero Year, you have the Red Hood Gang, a play on the Red Hood persona in Alan Moore's The Killing Joke. In Alan Moore's origin story for the Joker was a patsy, a fall guy, a joke, as the Red Hood during that raid on Ace Chemicals, the robbery. And fall guy, he even falls into a vat of chemicals. But snare drum, very funny. But Scott Snyder reimagined Joker's origin to have him, well, he never really confirmed it, but it's heavily hinted that he is the leader of this Red Hood gang who is hired by Riddler to kill Bruce Wayne, so they have some run-ins. And, of course, Bruce Wayne secretly is able to, use his Batman skills to keep surviving them. But during one of those run-ins, the leader says that he even came up with the idea for the Red Hood Gang because the Waynes were murdered. And the Red Hood Gang leader wanted to meet the cruel randomness of life head on. I guess in this movie, he'd be like, actually, it was the mob who probably most likely killed my parents. As I said in my spoiler review, I have a bit of a change with that change. I have a bit of a problem with that change to the Batman mythology. But anyway, of course, eventually here too, the Red Hood gang leader also falls into a vat of chemicals, and it's assumed that he is the Joker that later emerges for Scott Snyder's Batman. So that's why I'm mentioning all this, because don't be surprised if Riddler's new friend at Arkham is revealed to be the former head or a member of the Red Hood gang who tangled with Batman at Ace Chemicals and fell into a vat of them before being carted off to Arkham. And that's how he got those scars. Now, there are a lot of Joker stories to choose from moving forward, but Scott Snyder would go on to have the Joker cut off his own face, which he turns into a mask, his own mask. Get it? Get the joke? And with Joker's face already a mess, that could indeed be the next step that Reeves is planning. Although Warner Brothers has said they want to keep these movies PG-13, and I'm not sure how the MPAA would feel about cutting off your own face and wearing it as a mask. Maybe if it's bloodless, we'll see. I also did not care for that storyline either, but maybe Matt Reeves will do it well. Scott Snyder also leaned very heavily into the idea that Joker is in love with Batman. So it'll be interesting to see if Reeves uses that as well. Even some Harley Quinn stories recently have had her realize that she just can't compete with Batman when it comes to Joker's heart. So that could very much be explored, and it would be a different take on the Joker than we've seen in live action to date. I think that's the key, being very comics accurate, but also, being unique as a Batman live action story. I wonder, speaking of Arkham and Harley Quinn, if maybe Dr. Harleen Quinzel will show up in the next movie, or Dr. Hugo Strange, or even Dr. Jeremiah Arkham, who we now know would be a relative to Bruce. On that note, I wonder if the future Batman movies will focus on Bruce's own mental instability, because now he knows about his mother's family history with mental illness and her personal history with mental illness, and how, it's very likely a part of why he decided to become Batman instead of more traditional crime-fighting paths. I would love for them to explore that, and I felt a little cheated, as I said in my spoiler review, that they didn't do it in this movie. Okay, so that squares away Joker, who may or may not work with Riddler going forward in the movies. Maybe he'll just have him help him escape. We'll see. But we've also got to see what happens with Penguin, aka Oswald Cobblepot, who, with now both Maroni and Falcone out of the way, has the chance to become the main mob element of Gotham himself post-flood, which the movie pretty much said was going to happen. And they have said they have greenlit an HBO Max spin-off series focusing on the rise of Oswald Cobblepot. So by the time we get another Batman movie, Cobblepot likely will become the Penguin. You notice they haven't actually started filming any of these because they're waiting to see, how the Batman does before they decide to actually make these spin-offs. Now, although they seem like they'd be pretty cost effective, so hopefully they'll be able to do them. I hope the Batman is a big success. We'll see. As for other members of Batman's Rogues Gallery, Matt Reeves has already expressed an interest in doing Mr. Freeze next, and a more grounded, realistic take on the character, which of course I think brings to mind for all of us the Heart of Ice episode of Batman the Animated Series, one of its most celebrated by the industry and fans alike, which totally changed fans' view of Mr. Freeze, making him a far more sympathetic and complex character. That take on Freeze, again, fits perfectly with what Reeves sound very similar, what Reeves is doing with Batman. And so perhaps this flood could somehow be responsible for putting Nora Freeze in danger, hurting her, being put in deep freeze. I think I could easily see that being the catalyst that creates the Heart of Ice story that, Matt Reeves could do. I think that would be great. I think that would just be fabulous. I think you could easily do that. And of course, at the end of the movie, Catwoman tells Batman she's taking off for Bludhaven. Hilarious. Bludhaven, Gotham's famous sister city, and eventual home of Dick Grayson when he looks for his own city to protect his Nightwing. Reeves has said he'd also like to do an HBO Max spinoff for Catwoman. Again, they haven't done anything about that. They're hoping to. But I think that, along with the Penguin and GCPD series, but this works. Her going off to another city could be where her series takes place. It's actually, sets it up perfectly. Because you don't need her, because they're a separate series. You can't have her and Penguin running up against each other. You have to have their both characters evolve on separate tracks, and how better to do that than in separate cities. There have been some fabulous Catwoman heist stories over the years. Selina's Big Score, and even the new Killing Time miniseries that just started this week Tom King, you love him and you hate him, his writing. But I think I read all of his stuff. And I think, he has Catwoman and Riddler teaming up here with some fantastic artwork. Once again, Clayman, I think this is David Marquez. Tom King gets the best artists. But it's pretty good so far. I think it's pretty good. I'm enjoying it, even though Batman is part of the story. But Selina could do a lot of damage in Bludhaven, build up her fortune, especially with no Batman to stop her, and even no Nightwing, because it's early days, and then she could return to Gotham for the next movie, a member of high society herself. Excellent, love it. Finally, I would really love to see Robin finally introduced in live action for this next movie. Reeves and Pattinson have said that The Long Halloween was also a big influence on this movie, and you can see that. And what was the follow-up to The Long Halloween? Why, it was Batman Dark Victory, which introduced Robin and did a really fabulous job. They already had that stuff with the mayor's son in this movie, showing Batman really being drawn to other children who've gone through a similar experience to him. So I think they're all ready to do a Robin storyline. I think it would be fantastic. And again, a young Robin has never been done in live action. They had him ridiculously adopt an adult in Batman Forever. I thought that was just so silly. I would love to see them do that in the next movie. That's actually what I would like. I would like to see that actually done the most, because we've never had it. And I think it could be really cool. So those are all the clues we have for the future of the Batman. Share your own thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.